My name is Claire Donovan. I never imagined that pretending to be married to another man would become the most dangerous decision of my life. Trust me, you'll regret skipping this story. So before you sit back and listen, take a moment to like the video and subscribe to Grace's Truth. Now get in the mood to listen to this story because it might be the ultimate sweet revenge. It began on a gray Tuesday morning, the kind where the sky pressed down like a lid, muting every color. I was sitting in the newsroom sipping bitter coffee when my editor leaned across my desk. His voice dropped heavy with significance. "Claire, you're the only one I can trust with this," he said, sliding a manila folder toward me. Inside pages of financial records, shell corporations, and names, one name in particular, circled in red ink: Marcus Steele. Steele was untouchable, or so people thought. He was the kind of criminal who wore suits worth more than my car, who smiled in courtrooms because no jury could pin him down. He had politicians in his pocket banks under his thumb and a trail of ruined lives behind him. And now I was supposed to catch him. But this wasn't just another exposé. This was undercover work, living inside a role, deceiving a man who could smell weakness the way wolves smell blood. The plan sounded like fiction. I would move into a suburban neighborhood with my colleague Daniel Rhodes, and together we would pose as a married couple. Steele was known to frequent the same exclusive golf club, the same charity events, the same gated enclaves where neighbors exchanged pleasantries while laundering millions. To lure him out, we had to look like one of them. At first I laughed. Married to Daniel. Daniel was smart, methodical, the kind of man who read 3 newspapers before breakfast. Handsome in a clean-cut way but stiff, he carried himself like a man, forever on his best behavior. We were close enough as co-workers, but marriage, even a false one, was a different intimacy altogether. Still, I said yes. Because chasing Steele meant justice for the families he had bankrupted, the workers whose pensions he had gutted. And if I'm honest, I craved the challenge. My career had been leading to this, the story that could define me. I just didn't realize how much it would destroy me. The first time I told my husband Ethan about the assignment, I tried to keep my tone casual. We were in the kitchen, steam rising from the pasta pot, the smell of garlic filling the air. "It's big," I said, stirring sauce. "Dangerous, but important. I'll have to be away sometimes, maybe late nights, maybe even weekends." He looked up from his phone, brows knitting. "Away? For how long?" I hesitated. "How do you explain to your husband that you'll be living as another man's wife, even if only in name?" I softened it. "It's undercover work. We need to infiltrate Steele's circle. To do that, Daniel and I will be posing as a couple." The phone hit the counter with a sharp clack. His eyes darkened. "You're what?" "It's pretend," I said quickly. "Completely professional. We'll just be neighbors blending in." But Ethan's jaw tightened. "Neighbors don't call each other honey. Neighbors don't share a house." "What are you really agreeing to, Claire?" I tried to laugh it off, but his silence that night was heavier than any words. I should have seen the storm gathering. The next day, Daniel and I toured the house, a government-leased property in a manicured cul-de-sac. White shutters, freshly cut lawn, the illusion of safety wrapped in vinyl siding. Inside, everything smelled new, like paint and possibility. A stranger's family photos had already been staged on the mantel. Matching toothbrushes sat in the bathroom. The closets held clothes in both our sizes, pressed and waiting. Every detail whispered, "You belong here. You are married." Daniel adjusted his tie, surveying the kitchen. "We'll need to rehearse. Steele notices everything. If we fumble even once, he'll know." He was right. This wasn't a game of dress-up. Steele wasn't just a criminal, he was a predator. If he suspected us, he wouldn't hesitate to end us. So we began practicing. He'd brush past me in the hallway, hand grazing mine, casual and unthinking. I'd laugh too loudly at a joke, touching his arm like a wife might. We argued playfully about furniture choices or whose turn it was to cook. Little rehearsals of intimacy, rehearsals that blurred lines faster than I expected. At night, I'd drive back to Ethan, carrying lies in my purse like folded receipts. He'd watch me across the dinner table, eyes narrowed, searching for cracks. One evening, he finally said it. "Do you love him?" The words knocked the breath out of me. "Ethan, it's not like that. It's work." But he didn't believe me. Maybe because a part of me didn't believe myself. The first encounter with Steele came sooner than expected. Daniel and I were at the golf club dressed in neutral elegance, him in a crisp polo, me in a sleeveless dress that suggested money without effort. We laughed too loudly, played our parts too perfectly. And then he appeared. Marcus Steele. Silver hair, expensive tan, a smile that didn't reach his eyes. He extended a hand, and when I shook it, his grip lingered, testing, weighing. "New in town?" he asked. "Just moved in," Daniel said smoothly, his arm sliding around my waist. "Thought we'd try the club. My wife's quite the golfer." Wife. The word slipped into the air like smoke curling around us. Steele's gaze flicked to me, sharp and assessing. I smiled steady even as my pulse thundered. "Welcome," he said finally. But his eyes told me he'd already begun dissecting us. That night, lying in the strange bed of the staged house, I couldn't sleep. Daniel's steady breathing in the next room was both comfort and danger. I thought of Ethan, probably awake, staring at the empty side of our bed. I told myself I was doing this for justice, for truth. But beneath that conviction was a shadow I couldn't name, the creeping suspicion that this undercover marriage would cost me far more than I had bargained for. The staged marriage began with the smallest details that over time felt heavier than the mission itself. Every morning, Daniel would pour 2 cups of coffee before I even entered the kitchen. One black one with cream, the way Ethan used to do without asking. At first, I told myself it was practice, part of the act. But in the quiet of that house with no cameras, no audience, I sometimes wondered if the act was becoming too convincing. We had neighbors who waved at us while watering their lawns. They invited us to barbecues, to poker nights, to charity bake sales. Daniel and I would go together, his hand brushing mine in subtle gestures. It was astonishing how quickly people believed what they wanted to see. A ring on my finger, a smile timed at the right moment, and suddenly, we were the perfect couple. What unnerved me wasn't how easily others believed, it was how easily I believed. One night, while rehearsing cover stories, Daniel leaned back in his chair and sighed. "You know what's strange?" I looked up from the fake family photo album we'd been instructed to memorize. "What? How natural this feels. Like we've been doing it for years." His words hung in the air. I laughed too quickly. That's the point. If it didn't feel real, Steele would know. But when I caught his gaze, there was something unspoken there, an acknowledgement of the tension neither of us dared to name. I drove home later than usual that night. Ethan was waiting, sitting at the kitchen table in darkness, a single lamp illuminating the hard lines of his face. "Do you enjoy it?" he asked. His voice was low, controlled, more frightening than if he'd shouted. "Enjoy what?" Playing wife to him. My throat tightened. "Ethan, this is my job. People's lives depend on this." His jaw clenched. "And what about our life? Or does that not matter anymore?" I wanted to reach for him, to reassure him, but the truth was I didn't know how to answer, because a small guilty part of me had started to enjoy the ease of my staged life with Daniel. The laughter that didn't end in arguments. The way he noticed when I was tired without needing to be told. Ethan stood abruptly, the chair scraping against the floor. "You think you're playing a role, but I see it in your eyes, Claire. You're forgetting which life is real." He left me there in the silence, his words echoing like prophecy. The deeper we sank into our roles, the closer Steele seemed to circle. He had a way of appearing when least expected, at the farmer's market, at the gym, once even jogging through the neighborhood like a man with nothing to hide. Always smiling, always assessing. Every time we crossed paths, Daniel and I slipped effortlessly into character. He'd slide an arm around my shoulder and I'd laugh at some fabricated memory. We were careful to leave no cracks in the facade, but Steele wasn't easily fooled. One Saturday afternoon, we were at the country club pool when Steele sauntered over, drink in hand. He gestured at the empty lounge chair beside me. Mind if I join you? Daniel smiled. Of course not. Claire was just telling me how much she loves the club. Isn't that right, darling? My smile didn't falter, but my chest tightened. Steele leaned back, his gaze lingering too long on me. And what do you do, Claire? I answered smoothly, the rehearsed cover story spilling out like silk. I do freelance design. Gives me flexibility. He smirked. Convenient. A woman with time on her hands. Daniel's lucky. His tone was teasing, but underneath it was something sharper. A test. Daniel reached for my hand, lacing his fingers with mine. I know, he said. I'm the luckiest man alive. Steele chuckled, but his eyes never left me. And in that moment, I knew he didn't believe us completely. Later that evening, back at the house, I couldn't shake the feeling of being dissected. I paced the living room, arms wrapped around myself. He suspects, I said. I can feel it. Daniel frowned, loosening his tie. Then we have to tighten our act. No hesitation. No distance. His words sounded like an order, but his tone was gentler. Claire, if we're going to pull this off, we have to trust each other completely. Trust. The word lodged in my chest like a thorn. I couldn't even keep my own husband's trust, and here I was being asked to give it wholly to another man. When I got home that night, Ethan was waiting again, this time with a glass of whiskey in hand. He didn't look at me as I entered. Do you know what the neighbors are saying? He asked quietly. I froze. What? That you and Daniel look perfect together. He took a slow sip. Perfect. Do you understand what that means for me, Claire? Do you know what it's like to be the real husband while everyone else sees me as the outsider? I wanted to scream that none of this was my choice, that it was all part of a bigger mission. But the words caught in my throat, because in some ways the neighbors weren't wrong. One night, Daniel and I attended a charity gala, Steele's favorite hunting ground. The ballroom glittered with chandeliers, and the air smelled of expensive perfume and false laughter. Daniel placed his hand at the small of my back, guiding me through the crowd as though we'd done it 1,000 times. When Steele approached, champagne in hand, I felt Daniel's grip tighten, protective, possessive. Ah, my favorite couple. Steele said, his smile sharp. You two are always so convincing. Always so convincing. My stomach nodded. Was it a compliment or a warning? As we left, Steele's gaze burned into me. I knew then that this game of make-believe was no longer just about catching him. It was about surviving him. And survival demanded something I wasn't sure I could give, blurring the line between performance and truth, until even I couldn't tell the difference. By the time we drove home, my phone buzzed with messages from Ethan. Where are you? Who are you? With each one more frantic than the last. I silenced the phone, staring at Daniel's profile as he drove. Calm. Focused. Everything Ethan wasn't. And in that silence, guilt carved me open. I was betraying my husband not with touch or lips, but with something far more dangerous, my trust. I had no idea that his jealousy was about to become the sharpest weapon Steele could use against us. Suspicion is a slow poison. It creeps into the cracks of love, spreads into silence, and before long, everything you thought was solid turns fragile. That's what Ethan's jealousy became, a poison. At first, it was the small things. He started calling me more often while I was at work. When I didn't answer right away, he'd send a flurry of texts. Where are you? Who are you? With his tone, once warm, grew clipped. Even our dinners together felt like interrogations. I'd sit across from him at the table, fork in hand, while his eyes bore into me like searchlights. So he'd say, swirling his wine, "What did you and Daniel talk about tonight? Did you laugh at his jokes again? Did he call you darling?" I would set down my fork, fighting for patience. Ethan, it's an assignment. You think I enjoy living someone else's life? Yes, he snapped. I think a part of you does. The worst part? He wasn't entirely wrong. At the staged house, Daniel and I rehearsed our coupledom with unnerving ease. We cooked together, argued about the thermostat, laughed over board games. It was a script we didn't need to memorize anymore. It flowed naturally like water finding its path. But every time Daniel touched my arm in public, every time he called me honey within Steele's earshot, I felt Ethan's absence like a ghost. The guilt twisted tighter with each performance. One night after another neighborhood dinner party, I came home late. Ethan was in the living room, lights off, only the glow of the TV flickering across his face. He muted it as soon as I walked in. "Do you know what time it is?" His voice was calm, too calm. I glanced at the clock. "It's just past 11. The dinner went long." "Dinner," he repeated, leaning forward. With Daniel, my throat tightened. With the neighbors. With Steele there watching. "You think this is easy for me?" His eyes narrowed. "Don't twist this, Claire. I know what I see. You smile with him in ways you don't smile with me anymore." That cut deeper than he knew. I wanted to deny it, to scream at him for mistrusting me. But I couldn't lie, not convincingly. Because hadn't I caught myself smiling at Daniel, forgetting it was part of the act? The next day, things got worse. Daniel and I were supposed to meet Steele at the golf club again. The government handlers had planted us as a new couple in his circle, and now he was testing us, pushing us into casual encounters, probing for inconsistencies. As we walked into the club lounge, I froze. Ethan was there. He sat at the bar, drink in hand, pretending to watch the television. But his posture, his clenched jaw told me the truth. He wasn't there for a drink. He was following me. Daniel's eyes flicked to mine. "Problem," he murmured under his breath. My pulse thundered. My husband. Steele hadn't noticed yet. He was across the room laughing with two bankers. But if he saw Ethan, if he suspected I wasn't who I claimed to be, the mission would implode. I forced a smile, slipped my arm through Daniel's and whispered, "Play along. We need to act normal." Daniel's grip tightened slightly, a silent understanding. But I saw the flicker of irritation in his eyes. Ethan's presence wasn't just a risk, it was an intrusion on a dangerous game. We made it through that meeting without disaster, but the drive home was suffocating. Ethan called 3 times. I didn't answer. When I finally walked through our front door, he was waiting, fury radiating from him. "You think I wouldn't notice?" His voice cracked like thunder. "You think you can play house with him while I sit here like a fool?" "It's not like that," I shouted back, all my patience snapping. "This isn't about him. It's about Steele, about exposing a criminal who destroys lives. And what about our life? Claire, what about me?" His hands trembled as he ran them through his hair. "Every time you leave, I wonder if you're coming back to me at all, or if you're choosing him." His words landed like blows, because deep down I feared he was right. The lines were blurring, and I no longer knew where the act ended. The tension at home bled into the mission. Daniel noticed first. "You're distracted," he said one evening as we rehearsed another cover story. "I'm fine," I lied. "You're not," he countered gently. "If you let your husband's jealousy get to you, Steele will see it. And then we're dead." The bluntness stung, but he was right. Steele was circling closer, sharper, watching us like a hawk. Every hesitation, every flicker of doubt could be the thread that unraveled us. And Ethan was tugging at those threads with both hands. It all came to a head one night when Ethan followed me again, this time to a neighborhood cocktail party hosted by one of Steele's associates. Daniel and I played our roles perfectly, laughing, exchanging inside jokes, holding hands as if it were second nature. Steele drifted near, his predatory smile ever present. And then Ethan appeared at the edge of the crowd, his eyes locked on me, burning with accusation. For one breathless moment, I thought he'd storm over, demand answers, expose everything. My chest seized with panic. Daniel noticed too. His arm tightened around my waist, his voice dropping low in my ear. If he ruins this, Claire Steele won't hesitate. He'll tear us apart. I smiled at Steele, pretending everything was fine, but inside my world was shattering. My husband's jealousy wasn't just threatening my marriage anymore, it was threatening my life. That night, when I returned home, Ethan confronted me again. "I saw you," he hissed, pacing the kitchen like a caged animal, laughing, touching him. "Do you even realize what you look like? Do you even care?" My voice cracked. "Ethan, you're going to ruin this. You're going to get me killed." His face froze. For the first time, fear flickered in his eyes. "Killed? What are you talking about?" I sank into a chair, exhausted. "This isn't just play acting. Steele is dangerous. If he suspects I'm lying, if he finds out about you." My throat closed. "Ethan, please. You have to trust me." But trust was already gone. He turned away, fists clenched. "I won't stand by and watch you give yourself to another man, mission or not. If you won't protect our marriage, then I will." Those words chilled me more than anything Steele had ever said, because they weren't just born of love. They were born of jealousy, jealousy sharp enough to destroy us all. The night of our first real encounter with Marcus Steele still plays in my mind like a film reel, each frame edged in dread. It wasn't just another staged dinner or a passing introduction at the club. This time, he invited us into his world, into his carefully crafted lair where masks were worn as naturally as suits. Daniel and I received the invitation through a neighborly connection, but we both knew whose hand was behind it. Steele wanted to see us closer, wanted to weigh us like a butcher eyeing a slab of meat, deciding if it was worth carving. That afternoon, as I zipped up a modest black cocktail dress, my stomach churned. I stared at myself in the mirror, rehearsing my smile, soft, but not desperate. Charming, but not too eager. My reflection felt like a stranger. Daniel appeared in the doorway, already immaculate in a tailored suit. "You ready?" I forced a breath. "No, but let's go anyway." Steele's house sat at the top of a winding hill, a fortress masquerading as luxury. The driveway alone sparkled with expensive cars, Bentleys, Maseratis, a vintage Jaguar polished within an inch of its life. The house itself glowed with warm lights, but to me, it looked like the open jaws of a predator. Inside, the air hummed with laughter and jazz. Waiters floated with trays of champagne, the guests all powerful men and their manicured wives. Steele held court near the fireplace, his presence magnetic, suffocating. When he spotted us, his smile widened. "Ah, my favorite new couple," he drawled, moving toward us with calculated charm. "Daniel, Claire. Welcome." His gaze landed on me, lingering too long. My skin prickled. Daniel slipped an arm around my waist, his grip firm, grounding. "Thank you for inviting us," Daniel said smoothly. "We've heard so much about your events." Steele's smile didn't falter. "And I've heard much about you." The way he said it made my blood run cold. For the next hour, Steele toyed with us the way a cat toys with a mouse. His questions were casual on the surface: how long we'd been married, what brought us to the neighborhood, what hobbies we shared. But beneath each word was a blade testing for weakness. Daniel handled it with practiced ease. "Claire loves her design work," he said when Steele asked about me, "though I think she spends more time fixing my messes than anything else." I laughed on cue, leaning into him. "That's what wives are for, isn't it?" Steele's eyes flicked between us, sharp and knowing. "Is it?" he murmured. For a moment I thought he'd seen through us, but then he smiled, raising his glass. "To good neighbors, then." Glasses clinked. Laughter rang out, and yet beneath it all, I felt the walls closing in. During the dinner that followed, I excused myself to the powder room, needing air. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might give me away. As I washed my hands, the door opened, and Steele himself stepped inside. For a split second, my body froze. He leaned against the doorframe, his reflection sharp in the mirror. "Claire," he said softly, "you play your part well." My breath caught. I'm not sure what you mean. His smile was thin, dangerous. Every couple has tells. A glance too long, a laugh too forced. You and Daniel? Well, you're very convincing. Almost too convincing. He stepped closer and I felt the air thicken. I like to know who my friends are and who they aren't. The unspoken threat coiled around me. I forced a smile, tilting my head. All I know is my husband makes me laugh more than anyone else. That's real. His gaze lingered, then just as suddenly he chuckled. Good answer. And he walked away, leaving me trembling, my palms slick with sweat. When I returned to the table, Daniel's eyes immediately searched mine. I gave the smallest shake of my head. Not now. But it didn't matter. Steele had planted the seed of doubt, and I knew it would grow. The drive back to the staged house was heavy with silence until Daniel finally spoke. He suspects. I gripped the edge of my seat. I know. He cornered me. Daniel cursed under his breath, tightening his grip on the steering wheel. We'll have to double down. He'll be watching us now, testing us harder. One mistake, and we're finished. Finished. The word echoed inside me. Not just finished with the mission. Finished as in exposed. Dead. When I finally returned to Ethan that night, he was awake in bed, the lamp still on, eyes burning with questions. How was your dinner? He asked, his tone dripping with sarcasm. I sat on the edge of the bed, exhausted. Ethan, please, not tonight. Not tonight. He laughed bitterly. You come home smelling like someone else's cologne, whispering in your sleep, and you tell me not tonight. I whipped around. I almost died tonight, Ethan. Steele suspects us. Do you understand what that means? But he didn't flinch. All I understand is my wife is playing house with another man, and the world believes it more than they believe in us. His jealousy burned hotter than my fear. And in that moment I realized Steele wasn't the only danger circling me. Two predators. One in a tailored suit circling my false marriage. One in my own home consumed by jealousy. And sooner or later, one of them would strike. Intimacy is a strange thing. It doesn't always start with kisses or confessions. Sometimes it begins with silence, with the weight of someone's presence beside you when you're too exhausted to carry your own thoughts. That's how it started with Daniel. After Steele's dinner, the pressure intensified. Every move we made was under scrutiny. Steele's people were everywhere, watching, listening, waiting for the first slip. Daniel and I had to rehearse more, polish every detail of our lives together. And the more we rehearsed, the more the act began to feel like something else. One evening, we sat side by side on the couch in the staged house, memorizing the intricate lies we were expected to tell the year we met our honeymoon destination, the private jokes that made our story sound real. Daniel leaned his head back against the couch, eyes closed. We need to be seamless, Claire. Steele's too sharp. If we hesitate, we're done. I studied him for a moment. His jaw was tight, but his breathing slow, steady. I envied his calm. I know, I said softly. But sometimes it feels like we're living two marriages and I don't know which one's real anymore. His eyes opened, locking on mine. For a long beat, neither of us spoke. The silence was louder than words. Finally, he murmured, maybe both are real. Just in different ways. My chest tightened. I looked away, forcing a laugh. Careful. If you keep saying things like that, I might start believing them. But the truth was, I already did. The next morning, Daniel cooked breakfast pancakes, golden and imperfect. When he slid a plate in front of me, I laughed. These look like they've been through battle. He shrugged. We can't live on takeout forever. Married couples cook, don't they? I stabbed a forkful, tasting the burnt edges. Married couples also argue about who's doing the dishes. We both laughed, and for a moment it felt terrifyingly natural. That night when I drove home to Ethan, the kitchen was dark, the counters empty. He hadn't bothered cooking. A note sat on the table instead out. Don't wait up. I sank into a chair, staring at the empty space where my marriage used to live. I was playing wife in one house and watching my real marriage rot in another, and I didn't know which hurt more. The breaking point came a week later. Daniel and I were attending another neighborhood gathering. Steele's circle was expanding around us like a tightening noose. We laughed, touched arms, whispered secrets that weren't real, but sounded true. When Steele finally appeared, his eyes darted between us with quiet calculation. At one point, he leaned close to me and said, "You look happier every time I see you, Claire. Daniel must be treating you very well." The comment was casual, but I felt the knife beneath it. Daniel caught the flicker of panic in my eyes. Without missing a beat, he pulled me closer, pressing a kiss against my temple. "Of course she's happy," he said lightly. "She's married to me." Everyone laughed, but inside I froze, because that kiss wasn't in the script. Later that night, back at the house, I confronted him. "You shouldn't have done that." Daniel closed the door, his expression unreadable. He was testing us. I had to make it look real. I crossed my arms, pacing. It was too much. "You can't just, Claire." His voice was firm, steady. "Do you want to survive this? Do you want to expose Steele, or do you want to keep second-guessing every move we make?" His intensity silenced me. I hated how much sense he made. But the kiss, the warmth of it lingered, and I hated myself for remembering. When I went home that night, Ethan was waiting, pacing like a storm trapped in a bottle. "Did you think I wouldn't hear?" he hissed the moment I stepped in. My stomach dropped. "Hear what?" "That you let him kiss you." His voice broke on the word. "One of the neighbors saw." "Do you have any idea what it's like to hear gossip about your wife being kissed by another man? To have people pity me?" I reached for him. "It wasn't like that." "Ethan, it was for the mission." Steele was watching. "Stop." His voice was sharp enough to slice the air. "Stop lying to yourself. You're not just pretending anymore, Claire. I see it in your eyes. You're slipping." His words hit me harder than Steele's suspicion ever could, because they weren't entirely wrong. I wanted to scream that I loved him, that this marriage still mattered. But in that moment, all I could see was the way Daniel looked at me when he said survival depended on us being seamless. And I hated the truth buried in that. That part of me felt safer with Daniel than with my own husband. The days blurred after that. Every dinner party, every charity event, every casual encounter with Steele felt like another step on a tightrope stretched too thin. Daniel and I perfected our roles, finishing each other's sentences, brushing hands in ways that looked effortless, smiling at each other like people in love. And every time we did, the line between acting and feeling blurred more. I caught myself laughing genuinely at Daniel's dry humor. I caught him watching me when he thought I wasn't looking. The little things, the kind of details real couples collect without even noticing. Meanwhile, Ethan drifted further away. His silence grew heavier, his eyes sharper. He accused me with every glance, even when his lips said nothing. One night I woke to find him standing at the foot of the bed, just staring at me. "What are you doing?" I whispered, heart hammering. "Wondering," he said coldly, "if you'd even come home if you didn't have to." Then he left the room, and the space between us widened into something I feared we'd never close. Intimacy, guilt, betrayal, they tangled together until I couldn't separate one from the other. I was a wife in two houses, but in both, I was losing myself. And Steele, sharp-eyed and patient, was waiting for the day when all my cracks finally showed. Jealousy, when ignored, doesn't disappear. It festers. It sharpens into something dangerous. And Ethan's jealousy had reached that point, no longer words muttered in the dark, but actions sharp enough to slice through everything I'd built. It happened on a Thursday evening when Daniel and I were rehearsing for a charity auction where Steele would be present. We practiced our married banter, small arguments about which art piece we liked, jokes about who balanced the checkbook. I was trying to memorize the cadence, the rhythm of our act when my phone lit up. "Ethan." 3 missed calls, then a text. "If you don't come home now, I'm coming to you." My blood ran cold. Something wrong? Daniel asked, brow furrowed. I shoved the phone back into my bag. It's nothing. Let's keep going. But I couldn't focus. Every line I rehearsed felt fragile like paper already torn. By the time I got home that night, Ethan was waiting in the driveway leaning against his car. His arms were crossed, his jaw tight. Where were you? I swallowed. Work. You know that. Don't lie to me, Claire. His voice trembled with rage. I followed you last week. I saw you in that house. With him. Laughing. Acting like his wife. My heart plummeted. You what? I'm not stupid. You think you can just disappear into another man's life and I won't notice? Do you know what that does to me? His voice cracked, and for a moment he looked less like a furious man and more like someone drowning. I took a step closer, lowering my voice. Ethan, you can't follow me. You don't understand how dangerous this is. Steele is watching us constantly. If he sees you, then maybe he should know the truth. Ethan snapped. Maybe he should see that my wife isn't his to play with. The breath punched out of me. You don't understand, I whispered. If you expose me, you're not just ending the mission. You're putting me in Steele's hands. Do you know what he does to people who cross him? Ethan's chest rose and fell like a storm. I don't care. I won't stand by while you destroy our marriage. The words hung between us, a threat sharper than anything Steele could wield. The next night, Daniel and I attended the charity auction at a downtown hotel ballroom. Glittering gowns, tuxedos, champagne flutes. The air was thick with wealth and secrets. Steele was there, of course, holding court, every laugh calculated, every glance assessing. I felt Daniel's hand steady on my back as we moved through the crowd, smiling, laughing, the perfect couple. But then I froze. Ethan was there. At the edge of the room near the bar, standing rigid in a suit he rarely wore, his eyes locked on me. Panic surged through me. He's here, I whispered to Daniel. Daniel followed my gaze, his jaw tightening. Your husband? Yes. Daniel cursed under his breath. This will ruin everything. If Steele sees him, if he starts asking questions, I know, I hissed. My heart pounded so hard I thought it might give me away. We tried to stay composed, but I could feel Ethan's eyes burning into me with every laugh, every touch of Daniel's hand. And then, during the live auction, it happened. The auctioneer called for bids on a rare painting. Steele raised his paddle, Daniel raised ours. It was a choreographed move designed to provoke casual competition to establish Daniel as a wealthy man of Steele's caliber. But before the gavel could fall, Ethan raised his hand. I'll bid. Every head turned. Steele's eyes narrowed, flicking from Ethan to us. And who might you be? My blood turned to ice. Ethan looked straight at me as he spoke. Her husband. The room spun. I could barely breathe. Steele's smile curled slow and cruel, as if he'd just confirmed what he already suspected. Daniel recovered quickly, forcing a laugh. Ah, my wife's brother, he said smoothly, slipping his arm tighter around me. Always the joker. Isn't that right? Claire? Dozens of eyes pinned me, waiting for my reaction. My throat was dry, but I nodded, forcing a smile. That's right. He's always been protective. Ethan's jaw tightened, his fists clenched at his sides. For a terrifying second, I thought he'd call the bluff. But then he turned away, his silence seething. Steele's gaze lingered on me long after. The night ended in chaos. As soon as the event was over, Daniel pulled me aside. This can't continue, he hissed. If your husband interferes again, Steele will see through everything. He'll tear us apart. I know, I whispered, trembling. But Ethan won't stop. He doesn't trust me anymore. He thinks... My voice faltered. He thinks I'm choosing you. Daniel's expression softened, but his words were sharp. Then you need to choose Claire. Him or survival. It was the cruelest choice I'd ever been given. When I got home, Ethan was waiting, pacing like a trapped animal. The moment I walked in, he exploded. Don't you dare lie to me again. I saw the way he touches you, the way you look at him. Do you even remember what it feels like to be my wife? My own anger ignited. Do you even remember what it feels like to trust me? I shouted. This isn't about Daniel. This is about Steele. About staying alive long enough to finish this mission. Ethan slammed his fist against the table. And what about me, Claire? What about us? Or are we just another casualty in your war for justice? His words sliced through me, because maybe he was right. Maybe I had already lost him and I hadn't even realized it. The next morning, Daniel found me sitting in the staged house staring blankly at the family photos on the mantel. You okay? He asked gently. I shook my head. No. My husband is going to destroy us, Daniel. Not Steele. Not the mission. Ethan. Daniel's jaw tightened. Then we'll have to find a way to keep him out of this. Whatever it takes. But I knew Ethan wouldn't be kept out. His jealousy had grown into something dangerous, a weapon Steele would soon discover and use against me. And when that happened, no one would be safe. Suspicion. That's how predators like Steele survive. They don't need to be certain, they just need to sense a tremor in the ground before they strike. And thanks to Ethan's reckless stunt at the auction, Steele had caught a tremor. The following week, Daniel and I received an unexpected invitation, a private dinner at Steele's home. No crowd, no buffer of other guests, just him, us, and the razor edge of his questions. Daniel read the embossed card aloud in the staged kitchen. Marcus Steele requests the pleasure of your company Thursday at 7. He set the card down slowly. This isn't hospitality, it's a test. My stomach tightened. He knows something's off. Daniel's eyes met mine. Then we can't give him a single crack. But there were already cracks, and they weren't in our cover story. They were in me. In Ethan's jealousy, in my guilt, in the blurred lines between pretending and feeling. And Steele, with his predator's instinct, was circling closer to them. On Thursday evening, I dressed carefully, a navy dress, understated but elegant. Daniel arrived at the door in a charcoal suit, every detail precise. For a moment I thought, we look like a real couple. And that thought alone made guilt coil in my chest. Steele's mansion glowed like a stage set when we arrived. The butler led us into a dining room where a long table gleamed with crystal and silver. Steele sat at the head, a smile curling across his lips. Welcome, welcome, he said, gesturing us forward. Please sit. I've been looking forward to knowing my new neighbors better. We took our seats. The air was heavy, not with food, but with scrutiny. The dinner began innocuously enough. Wine-poured soup served. Steele asked about our wedding, about our supposed honeymoon in Italy. Daniel and I answered in perfect unison, our rehearsed stories flowing like water. But Steele's eyes were sharp, watching every twitch, every hesitation. At one point, he leaned toward me. So, Claire, tell me, what's Daniel's worst habit? My heart skipped. We hadn't rehearsed that. I forced a smile, buying time with a sip of wine. He leaves socks everywhere, I said, finally rolling my eyes. Drives me crazy. Daniel chuckled, picking up the cue. She's not wrong. I'm hopeless. Steele smiled, but I saw the flicker of something in his eyes. He was probing deeper, testing the improvisation beneath our script. Halfway through the meal, Steele's tone shifted. He set down his glass and leaned back, studying us. You know, he said, I pride myself on reading people. Most couples reveal themselves quickly. The way they argue, the way they touch, the way they breathe when the other speaks. His gaze locked on me. But you two, you're interesting. Almost too perfect. The air froze. Daniel didn't flinch, his voice smooth. Maybe that's just what happens when you marry the right person. Steele's smile widened, slow and unsettling. Or maybe it's what happens when people are hiding something. I gripped my fork tightly under the table, my knuckles white. After dinner, Steele led us into his study, a room lined with leather-bound books and a single safe tucked behind a painting. He poured brandy, his movements deliberate. Tell me, he said, handing me a glass. Do you ever keep secrets from each other? It was an innocent question on the surface, but his eyes were knives. Daniel smiled, draping an arm around my shoulder. Never. She knows everything about me. Steele tilted his head, gaze flicking to me. And you, Claire? Do you know everything about him? The brandy burned down my throat. I forced a laugh. Enough to keep him honest. Steele chuckled, but the silence that followed was heavier than his words. Later that night, when Daniel and I finally left, the tension in the car was suffocating. He knows, I whispered. He doesn't believe us. Daniel's hands tightened on the steering wheel. He suspects, but suspicion isn't proof. What matters is that we don't crack. But cracks were already spreading, not just between us and Steele, but inside me. Because when I got home, Ethan was waiting again. He was in the living room, lights dimmed, a glass of whiskey in hand. His eyes were bloodshot, his voice low. Where were you? I dropped my bag, exhausted. Not tonight, Ethan. Please. Not tonight. He stood, advancing slowly. You disappear into another man's house, you come home smelling of his cologne, and you tell me not tonight. I spun, fury snapping inside me. I almost died tonight. Steele cornered us, tested us. If I'd slipped even once, we'd be finished. Do you understand that? But Ethan didn't hear me. His jealousy drowned out everything. You call it acting, but I see the way you look at him. Tell me the truth, Claire, do you want him? The question sliced through me. I wanted to scream no, to insist he was wrong. But the hesitation, even for a heartbeat, was enough. His face crumpled. God. You do. No, I cried, reaching for him. But he stepped back, shaking his head. You've already chosen. Don't pretend otherwise. He stormed out the door, slamming so hard it rattled the walls. And in that silence, I realized the truth. Steele wasn't the only one testing me. Ethan was too. And I was failing them both. The next morning, Daniel found me pale and sleepless at the staged house. What happened? He asked. My husband, I whispered. He doesn't trust me anymore. He thinks I want this. Daniel's gaze softened, but his words were grim. Then, he's going to be dangerous. If Steele senses his jealousy, he'll use it. Claire, your husband isn't just a liability now. He's a weapon waiting to be turned against you. The thought made my blood run cold, because I knew Daniel was right. And Steele, sharp-eyed, patient, merciless, was already circling, waiting for the moment to strike. Jealousy doesn't just poison words, it poisons actions. And when Ethan crossed the line from suspicion to interference, he didn't just put our marriage at risk, he put my life in Steele's hands. It started with small sabotages. One evening, Daniel and I hosted a casual neighborhood wine night at the staged house. It was supposed to be simple, a chance for Steele's associates to mingle, a test of our hosting skills as a couple. Everything was in place. Candles lit, wine decanted, hors d'oeuvres arranged like artwork. But when I stepped into the kitchen, my stomach dropped. The oven was cold, the hors d'oeuvres ruined. Someone had switched off the settings I'd carefully set earlier. Daniel frowned as I frantically tried to salvage the trays. What happened? I didn't answer. I already knew. Ethan had a key. When Steele arrived later that evening, the burnt food, the awkward silences, the forced laughter, all of it fed into his suspicion. His eyes lingered on me longer than usual, his smile sharper. And I could almost feel Ethan's invisible hand tightening around my throat. The next sabotage was louder. Daniel and I had arranged a meeting at a local cafe where Steele often held informal discussions with his contacts. It was the perfect chance to edge closer into his inner circle. We arrived early, rehearsed our lines, and when Steele walked in, Daniel placed his hand lightly on mine across the table. A practiced gesture, a married couple's intimacy. And then, the cafe door slammed open. Ethan. He stormed in, eyes scanning until they landed on me. His voice carried across the room. Claire Steele's gaze flicked toward him, instantly sharp as a blade. My heart stopped. Ethan strode over his face a storm of betrayal. What the hell is this? You sneaking off to play wife with him now. The cafe went silent. Every word echoed like a gunshot. Steele's smile was thin, amused, but his eyes burned with calculation. Daniel's voice was calm, deceptively casual. Brother, not now. You've had too much to drink. Ethan's head snapped toward him. Brother. His laugh was bitter, broken. You think I'm playing along with your lies? I grabbed Ethan's arm nails, digging in. Stop! I hissed through clenched teeth. Do you want to get me killed? For a moment, his fury faltered, confusion flickering across his face. But it was too late. Steele had already seen enough. The meeting ended quickly after that. Steele excused himself with polite words, but his eyes told a different story. He was filing everything away, piecing together the cracks. When we returned to the staged house, Daniel exploded. Do you understand what just happened? His voice was sharp, stripped of his usual composure. He saw everything. Your husband nearly destroyed months of planning in 5 minutes. I sank into a chair, trembling. I didn't ask him to come. He followed me. He's unraveling. Daniel paced, running a hand through his hair. Unraveling, he's sabotaging us. And Steele isn't stupid. He'll dig, he'll test harder. Next time, Claire, he won't just smile. Next time, he'll pounce. I buried my face in my hands. What am I supposed to do? He's my husband. Daniel's tone softened, but the words cut deep. Right now, he's not your husband. He's your liability. And if you don't choose, Steele will make the choice for you. That night, when I finally came home, Ethan was waiting. He was sitting in the dark again, whiskey glass untouched on the table. His voice was quiet, almost broken. I saw the way you looked at him. I froze. Ethan, you don't look at me like that anymore. His hands trembled as he spoke. You laugh with him. You trust him. You belong to him now, don't you? Tears stung my eyes. I belong to you. I always have. But you're making this impossible. You're putting me in danger. In danger, his laugh was hollow. The only danger here is losing you. I wanted to scream, to shake him, to make him see. But instead, I whispered, Ethan, if Steele finds out who I really am, he will kill me. And you, walking into that cafe, that wasn't protecting me. That was handing me to him on a silver platter. For a moment, his face crumpled with guilt. But then jealousy surged back, drowning it out. Maybe I'd rather see it all burn than watch you slip away from me piece by piece. My chest ached as if someone had struck me, because in that moment I realized Ethan wasn't just blinded by jealousy. He was willing to ruin everything, even if it meant destroying me. The following day, Steele's suspicion became undeniable. We were at the country club, Daniel and I, pretending to enjoy a casual afternoon. Steele joined us, smiling as always, but his questions had sharpened into knives. So, Daniel, he said, leaning back in his chair, tell me, what's Claire's favorite childhood memory? Daniel hesitated for half a second. Just half a second. But Steele saw it. His eyes flicked to me, waiting. I forced a laugh. He always forgets the details. It was summers at my grandmother's lake house. He teases me about how I used to fall off the dock. Daniel chuckled, recovering. But the damage was done. Steele had seen the hesitation. His smile widened. Interesting. And in that single word, I felt the trap closing. That night, Daniel and I sat in silence in the staged house. Finally, he spoke. It's only a matter of time. He's circling us like a wolf. And your husband is throwing him the scent. I closed my eyes, exhaustion pressing down. Then what do we do? Daniel's voice was low. We survive. Whatever it takes. I shivered. Because whatever it takes sounded less like survival and more like sacrifice. When predators set traps, they don't roar. They smile. They extend invitations wrapped in velvet, scented with wine and laced with poison. That's exactly what Steele did. The invitation arrived with the elegance of a perfectly choreographed performance. A handwritten card, cream-colored edges gilded, delivered to our staged house by a polite young man in a suit. Mr. Steele requests the honor of your company at his private villa this Saturday, it read. A gathering among friends, intimate and refined. My blood went cold. Private, intimate, refined. Every word screamed trap. Daniel and I exchanged a look, no words necessary. We both knew what it meant. Steele was done circling. He was tightening his claws, ready to see if our story would bleed under pressure. Saturday arrived like a funeral. I dressed carefully, choosing a silk dress that whispered sophistication, but not ostentation, a shade of deep emerald that Daniel insisted made my eyes look sharper, more dangerous. My hands trembled as I fastened the bracelet, the one Steele had once complimented. Daniel stood at the door, adjusting his tie, his jaw locked in grim determination. Remember, he said quietly, every smile you give him is a shield. Every word is a weapon. Don't let him see the cracks. I nodded, though inside I felt like a glass about to shatter. The villa was breathtaking, a fortress disguised as luxury. Marble floors, chandeliers, dripping crystal walls lined with art worth more than my entire salary. The air smelled of expensive cigars and power. Steele greeted us with a warmth that chilled me to the bone. His hand brushed mine a second too long, his eyes holding mine as if daring me to flinch. Ah, the happy couple, he said smoothly. I've been looking forward to this all week. We smiled, played our roles, but I could feel his gaze stripping away the layers of our act. The evening unfolded like a play written for an audience of one. There were only 6 guests, all carefully selected: a judge with a penchant for gambling, a senator's aide with a wandering eye, 2 businessmen whose wealth dripped from their watches, Daniel and me, and Steele the conductor orchestrating every note. Wine flowed, conversations drifted from politics to art to whispers of scandals. But beneath it all was Steele's unspoken test. Every question he asked us carried weight. Every glance lingered too long. So, Daniel, he said at one point, swirling his glass, tell us, how did you propose to Claire? Daniel didn't miss a beat. He smiled, leaning closer to me, his hand brushing mine. At the lake where she spent her childhood summers. She thought I was joking at first. I laughed, tilting my head just so. Because you tripped on the dock right before you asked. The table chuckled politely, and for a fleeting second I thought we'd passed. But then Steele's eyes narrowed, the corner of his mouth twitching. He remembered the hesitation from before. He was connecting threads, weaving a net. Later, after dinner, Steele led us to his private study. It was darker than the rest of the villa, heavy with leather and smoke. A fire crackled in the hearth shadows, dancing across the walls. He poured 3 glasses of brandy, handing one to Daniel, one to me, and keeping the third for himself. To love, he toasted, his smile razor thin, the strongest bond of all. I raised my glass, my throat dry. To love, we drank. The brandy burned down my throat like liquid fire. Steele leaned back in his chair, studying us as if we were specimens under glass. Tell me, he said softly, do you believe love can survive anything? Lies, betrayal, secrets? The silence stretched, suffocating. Daniel answered first. If it's real, yes. Steele's gaze shifted to me. And you, Claire? Would you forgive lies from the man you love? I forced a smile, though my pulse thundered in my ears. If the love is true, the lies fall away. They don't stand a chance. Steele's smile widened, satisfied but not convinced. When we left the villa hours later, my entire body was trembling. In the car, Daniel exhaled a breath he'd been holding all night. He knows, he muttered. He's playing with us. That wasn't dinner, that was dissection. I nodded, staring out the window at the dark trees rushing past. How much longer can we keep this up? As long as we have to, Daniel said firmly, until we get what we came for. But even he sounded less certain than before. The worst part wasn't Steele's suspicion. It was Ethan. When I got home that night, he was waiting again. But this time, he wasn't drunk. He was cold, calculated. "I know where you went," he said quietly. "I followed you." My stomach dropped. "Ethan," he stepped closer, his eyes burning with a mix of jealousy and triumph. "You think you're clever sneaking around with him. But I see it all. And I won't let you go." My hands shook as I reached for him. "Ethan, listen to me. You're not protecting me. You're putting me in danger." He grabbed my wrist, his grip iron. "Maybe danger's what it takes to keep you. Maybe if he thinks you're mine, he'll back off." I ripped my hand free, my voice breaking. "You don't understand. He's not jealous, he's suspicious. And if he learns the truth, I'll be dead before you can even blink." For the first time, Ethan faltered. His bravado cracked, revealing the fear beneath. "Then tell me what to do. Because I can't stand by and watch this anymore." Tears blurred my vision. "Then trust me. Just trust me one more time. If you can't, you'll lose me not to Steele, not to Daniel, but to the grave." That night, as I lay awake, Ethan's words echoed in my skull. He was unraveling, but he was still mine, and Steele was circling closer every second. Between the two of them, I felt like a rope stretched between two knives fraying with every pull, and I knew deep in my gut that the next trap Steele laid would not be velvet and wine. It would be blood and fire. I've always believed there are two kinds of silence. The first is comforting, the kind that drapes itself over two people who understand each other without words. The second is suffocating, heavy, designed to smother and break you. The night Steele invited all three of us into the same room, I felt the second kind pressing down on my lungs like a weight. It began with another invitation, this time not on gilded paper but through a phone call that felt like a noose tightening around my throat. Claire Steele said, his voice smooth as oil. "I've heard so much about your husband. Why don't you bring him to the gala tomorrow night? Daniel, of course, will be there." I insist. Every syllable was deliberate. He wasn't asking, he was summoning. I could hear the trap clicking shut. I tried to talk Ethan out of it. "You can't go." I begged him, pacing the bedroom like a caged animal. "He's baiting us. He wants to see how we'll act when the masks collide." Ethan's jaw tightened, his arms crossed over his chest. "So what? Let him look. Maybe it'll prove I'm your husband. Maybe it'll scare him off." "You don't understand," I hissed. "Steele doesn't scare. He calculates. He thrives on weakness. The second he senses something off, it's over." Ethan's eyes burned into mine. "Then we give him nothing. You and I will show him what marriage looks like. Real marriage. Not the performance you've been staging with Daniel." His words cut deeper than any blade, because in his mind this was still a competition. Not a mission. Not life and death. A war for my love staged on a battlefield I hadn't chosen. And I realized no matter how much I pleaded, Ethan would go. The gala was opulent. The kind of event where diamonds glittered brighter than the chandeliers, where champagne flowed like water, where secrets traded hands with every clink of a glass. Steele was in his element. He prowled the room like a king, surveying his kingdom, every handshake a conquest, every smile a veiled command. And then he saw us, me, Daniel, Ethan, together. His smile stretched wider than I'd ever seen a predator, savoring the moment the prey stepped willingly into his jaws. "Ah, Claire," he purred, taking my hand, brushing it with lips that lingered too long. "And this must be your husband." Ethan stiffened, his hand sliding possessively to the small of my back. "That's right," he said coolly. "Ethan." Steele's eyes flicked to Daniel, who stood just a step too close, his jaw clenched, his roll barely holding together. "Charmed," Steele murmured. "Truly charmed." The silence that followed was sharp enough to draw blood. The night unfolded like a nightmare written by someone who hated happy endings. Steele made sure the three of us were never far apart. Every conversation, every toast, every glance was a thread pulling tighter around us. He asked questions dripping with venom. "So, Ethan, how did you and Claire meet?" Ethan answered proudly, his hand gripping mine like a vice. "College. She spilled coffee on me the first day. Haven't been able to shake her since." The guests laughed. Daniel forced a smile, his eyes darting to me, silently begging me to hold steady. Steel leaned in his voice, velvet and blade all at once. "Funny. Daniel told me once you two met at work." "Which is it?" My stomach lurched. The room tilted. For a split second I froze. Then I laughed, sharp, practiced, almost believable. "Both, actually. I met Ethan in college, but years later Daniel and I worked together. Life has a way of overlapping, doesn't it?" The tension broke like glass underfoot. Guests nodded, the conversation moved on. But Steele's eyes stayed on me, unblinking. He wasn't convinced. Later, Steele orchestrated the final blow. He raised his glass, commanding the room's attention. "To love," he declared, his eyes gleaming, "the kind of love that survives time, temptation, and truth." Every face turned toward us. Toward me. "Why don't you show us Steele?" said, smiling like a cat with a cornered mouse. "Claire, why don't you kiss your husband?" The world stopped. Ethan looked at me, triumphant, certain this was his moment. Daniel looked at me too, his eyes wide with warning, pleading silently, "Don't." And I stood between them, my body trembling, the crowd waiting, Steele savoring every second. If I kissed Ethan, I betrayed the mission, the cover, the fragile balance we'd built. If I refused, I exposed us all. My heart thundered so loudly I thought it would echo through the hall. So I did the only thing I could. I kissed Ethan. His lips pressed against mine with desperate triumph, his arms pulling me close as if to stake a claim before the world. The crowd clapped politely, toasting, smiling. Steele's expression, however, didn't shift. His eyes burned with amusement, with knowledge. He had seen the hesitation, the fracture. When the applause faded, he leaned close, whispering in my ear so only I could hear. "Beautiful performance, Claire. But tell me, who was it really, for him? Or me?" That night I couldn't sleep. Ethan was smug, certain he had won some invisible battle. Daniel was silent, the betrayal etched in the hard lines of his face. And me, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, feeling the walls closing in. Because Steele had seen through us. Not completely, not enough to strike yet, but enough to know the play wasn't flawless. Enough to sharpen his blade. And the worst part, he wasn't going to expose us. Not yet. He was going to keep playing, stretching the game until we broke ourselves apart. And I could already feel the cracks forming. When I woke the next morning, I knew Steele wasn't going to let last night fade into memory. Men like him didn't throw out challenges for sport. They sharpened them into weapons. I was right. By noon, a bouquet arrived at the office. Dozens of blood-red roses, their petals so dark they were nearly black. No card, no signature. Just a single line written on thick paper tucked between the stems. "Which man will bleed for you first?" I nearly dropped the note. My palms shook as though I'd just touched fire. Ethan wasn't at work. He'd stayed home nursing his pride after the gala. Daniel saw the delivery, his jaw tightening as he read the line over my shoulder. "This is a warning," he said. "He's escalating." "It's more than that," I whispered. "It's a promise." That evening, Steele called. His voice was casual, playful, as though we were old friends sharing an inside joke. "Did you enjoy the roses, Claire?" My mouth was dry. They were thoughtful. "I thought so," he purred. "But they aren't really for you. They're for your men. I wonder, will your husband protect you out of love, or will your partner protect you out of duty? Either way, someone will fall." I tried to steady my breathing. "You won't win." His laugh was low, rich, chilling. "Claire, I already have. Watching you squirm is the prize." The line clicked dead, but his words stayed burning into my chest. The tension between Ethan and Daniel became unbearable. At home, Ethan cornered me. "What was that about last night? You froze before kissing me. Do you have any idea how that made me look in front of everyone? This isn't about you." I snapped, my voice sharper than I intended. "This is about Steele, about survival." "No," he shot back. "It's about us. And don't pretend otherwise. You hesitate every time I touch you. You think I don't see it? You think I don't know that he jabbed a finger in the air as though Daniel stood in the room is still in your head. I wanted to scream. To tell him he didn't understand. But Daniel wasn't just in my head. He was in my life, my survival, my mission, and I couldn't untangle the threads anymore. At the precinct, Daniel wasn't better. He barely looked at me. His words clipped, his movements mechanical. When I finally cornered him in the evidence room, he spat out the truth I'd been avoiding. "You chose him." "It wasn't a choice," I pleaded. "It was survival. You know that." His eyes burned with something between rage and heartbreak. "I know you kissed him like you meant it." My throat tightened, because the truth was I wasn't sure anymore what I had meant. Days blurred. Steele kept pushing. Anonymous notes, mysterious phone calls, sudden appearances in places he shouldn't have been. Every move designed not to kill me but to drive wedges deeper between me, Ethan, and Daniel. Then came the dinner invitation. It was delivered to my desk in a black envelope sealed with wax. Inside a single sheet, "Tomorrow, 8 p.m. Just you, your husband, and Daniel. A private dinner." No excuses. It wasn't an invitation. It was a command. I showed it to Daniel first. He swore under his breath. "It's a trap." "Of course it's a trap," I whispered. "But if we don't go, we tip our hand. Steele will know." Ethan's reaction was worse. He laughed loud, bitter, reckless. "Perfect. Let's all sit at the table and see who you reach for first. Him or me. Maybe Steele will enjoy the show." "You don't get it," I said, my voice shaking. "This isn't theater. This is life and death." "No," Ethan said flatly. "It's both." The dinner was held in a private room at an exclusive restaurant downtown. When we arrived, Steele was already seated at the head of the long table, sipping wine like a king awaiting his subjects. "Ah, my favorite triangle," he drawled, gesturing to the seats arranged neatly across from him. "Husband, partner, wife. How delicious." The waiter poured wine. Food appeared decadent and rich, though I couldn't taste a thing. Every bite felt like poison waiting to settle in my stomach. Steele toyed with us, asking pointed questions, watching our reactions like a cat with cornered mice. "Tell me, Ethan," he said at one point, swirling his glass, "what's it like being married to a woman every man in the room wants?" Ethan stiffened, his hand tightening around his fork. "I wouldn't know. She's mine." Steele smirked, then turned to Daniel. "And you, Daniel? You work so closely with her. How do you manage the temptation?" Daniel's jaw clenched. He didn't answer. The silence was heavy, suffocating. Exactly what Steele wanted. Then he leaned forward, his smile razor sharp. "Here's my game," he said. "One of you will protect her. One of you will betray her. And Claire, you'll have to decide which is which before the night is over." My blood ran cold. "What do you mean?" I whispered. Steele's smile widened. "By midnight, one of these men will no longer stand by your side, whether by choice or by force. The question is, which one will you sacrifice?" The air in the room thickened. Ethan shot to his feet, fists clenched. Daniel rose too, eyes blazing. Both were ready to fight for me, for pride, for everything. And me, I sat frozen, realizing the truth. This was never about roses, or kisses, or dinners. This was about destruction. Steele didn't need to kill me. He just needed to make me choose. And the worst part was, deep down, I knew I couldn't save them both. The moment Steele laid out his game, the walls seemed to close in on me. My chest tightened until I could barely breathe. Across the table, Ethan and Daniel bristled like predators forced into the same cage. The air was thick with heat wine, and the weight of an unspoken truth one of them was about to break. Steele leaned back, utterly relaxed, savoring our discomfort. His fingers tapped a slow rhythm on the table like a countdown only he knew. "Don't look so panicked, Claire," he said smoothly. "It's just a choice. We all make them. Some with our heads, some with our hearts. Tonight you get to decide which you trust more." I wanted to scream, to throw the wine in his smug face, to rip that confident smirk away with my bare hands, but I couldn't. Not with Ethan and Daniel both watching me like their entire lives depended on my answer. Because maybe they did. The food sat untouched between us. The waiters had left. The doors had been locked from the outside. Steele had ensured privacy, but it didn't feel like luxury. It felt like a coffin. Ethan was the first to break. "You're insane," he spat, slamming his palm against the table. "You think you can manipulate us like pieces on a chessboard? You're nothing but a parasite." Steele's gaze flicked to him, amused. "And yet, here you sit, desperate for your wife's approval, desperate to prove you're the better man. Tell me, Ethan, if she reached for Daniel right now, what would you do? Walk away? Or slit his throat?" Ethan's jaw flexed. His silence was more terrifying than any words. Daniel shifted beside me. "You don't get to do this," he growled. "Claire doesn't owe you a performance. She doesn't owe anyone. Doesn't she?" Steele tilted his head, eyes glittering. "Every breath she takes, she owes to men like you. Husband, partner, protector. Without you, she's nothing but a target. And I like reminding her of that." I clenched my fists under the table, my nails biting into my palms until pain shot through me. "Stop it," I whispered. Steele leaned forward. "Make me." The room spun. The walls pressed closer. Ethan's hand brushed the knife beside his plate. Daniel's shoulders tensed, ready to spring. "No." My voice cracked like thunder. Both men froze, their eyes snapping to me. "This is exactly what he wants. Don't you see? He doesn't care who wins. He just wants us to destroy each other." Steele smiled slowly, like a teacher pleased with his brightest student. "And you're not wrong. But Claire, you're forgetting something important." He pulled a small device from his jacket pocket and placed it on the table. A blinking red light pulsed in the dim glow of the chandelier. My stomach dropped. "A bomb," Daniel muttered. Steele smirked. "Not quite. Just a signal. If I don't leave this room alive, a very unfortunate accident will happen at your home, Claire. Imagine the flames, the screams. Such a tragedy for the neighborhood." My blood iced over. "You're bluffing." His eyes locked with mine. "Do I look like the bluffing type?" Ethan lunged forward, grabbing the device. Steele didn't even flinch. "Go ahead," he said. "Smash it. See what happens." I shot up from my chair, yanking Ethan back with all my strength. "Don't. Please. Don't risk it." Ethan's chest heaved, his knuckles white around the device. Finally, with a growl, he slammed it back onto the table. Steele chuckled, utterly delighted. "That's better. Now." "Where were we?" Daniel's voice was low, dangerous. "If you hurt her, I'll kill you." "Maybe you will," Steele said. "But not before I ruin her. You see, Claire, the real thrill isn't ending lives. It's making people beg for them." His words wrapped around me like chains. My throat burned with unshed tears. "Why me?" I asked. My voice was small, broken. "Out of all the people you could have chosen, why me?" For the first time, Steele's smile faded. His eyes softened, not with kindness, but with something twisted. "Because you remind me of her," he murmured. "Her, my wife." He said, his tone almost wistful. "She betrayed me once. Thought she could outsmart me. Thought she could leave. But she didn't." My stomach turned. I didn't want to know what had happened to her. You, he continued, you have her fire, that stubborn will. But the difference, Claire, is that I'll break you before you get the chance to break me. Ethan slammed his fist onto the table, rattling the plates. You'll never touch her? Steele's eyes glittered as he leaned back, spreading his arms in mock surrender. Then prove it. Right here. Right now. Who will she stand behind, the jealous husband or the loyal partner? Both men turned to me. My heart pounded so hard it hurt. Their faces blurred. My breath came shallow and ragged. I couldn't choose. I loved Ethan, but Daniel had become my lifeline. I owed Ethan loyalty, but Daniel understood me in ways my husband never could. And Steele was drinking in my torment like fine wine. I won't do this, I whispered. Steele's smile returned slow and cruel. Then I'll choose for you. He snapped his fingers. The door opened. Two of his men entered, guns glinting under the dim light. Ethan pushed me behind him instantly. Daniel Rose's muscles coiled like a spring. Steele clapped once, delighted. Perfect. Let's see which one of them dies protecting you. Time slowed. My pulse roared in my ears. The men raised their guns. No, I screamed, surging forward. I grabbed the wine bottle from the table and smashed it against the edge glass, shattering jagged neck, dripping red liquid like blood. Without thinking, I pressed it to my own throat. The room froze. You kill either of them, I hissed, and I end it here. You'll have no game, no victory, nothing. Steele's eyes narrowed, studying me like a puzzle he hadn't solved. For the first time, uncertainty flickered across his face. Claire. Daniel breathed, his voice raw. Put the guns down, I demanded, now. The room trembled with silence. Then slowly, Steele raised a hand. His men lowered their weapons, though their eyes stayed cold. Steele leaned forward, his voice a whisper meant only for me. You've got fire, he said, but fire always burns itself out. And with that, he stood, pocketed the device, and walked out, leaving me shaking broken glass at my throat, and two men at my side who were ready to kill each other. The silence after Steele's departure was heavier than any gunshot. His men trailed behind him like shadows, the door clicking shut with a finality that echoed through my bones. For a moment, the three of us just stood there, me with a shard of glass still trembling against my throat. Ethan with his fists clenched and chest heaving, and Daniel tense as a coiled spring ready to strike at ghosts. Then my knees buckled. The glass slipped from my hand, clattering onto the table. Daniel caught me before I collapsed to the floor. His arms were strong, grounding, but when Ethan rushed forward to take me from him, Daniel didn't let go. Let her breathe, Daniel snapped. She's my wife, Ethan, barked back. The words cut deeper than the glass ever could. I pushed them both away, forcing myself to stand. Stop. Please. I can't. My voice cracked, my body shaking uncontrollably. I can't do this anymore. He's tearing us apart and we're letting him. Ethan's face twisted with anguish. I was trying to protect you by grabbing a knife. I snapped, the tremor in my voice edged with fury. By almost getting yourself killed, Daniel's voice was quieter but no less sharp. And you, I turned on him. You act like you're my savior, but do you even realize what you're doing? You're feeding into it. Both of you are. You're letting him win. They fell silent. The room smelled of wine and fear, the shattered bottle bleeding across the table like a wound that wouldn't close. I wrapped my arms around myself, trying to hold in the pieces of me that felt like they were scattering. He's not just playing with us. He's planning something bigger. That device wasn't a bluff. Daniel nodded grimly. He's escalating. If we don't stop him soon, someone else will pay the price. Ethan's jaw clenched. Then we stop him. Together. But the way he said it, the way he looked at Daniel when he said it, told me the word together was already fractured. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every creak of the house sounded like footsteps. Every flicker of the streetlight outside felt like the red blink of Steele's device. Ethan lay beside me, but it might as well have been an ocean between us. He turned on his side back facing me, his breathing heavy, uneven. I reached out once, my hand hovering over his shoulder, but I pulled it back before touching him. Because even in the dark, I could feel his doubt, his jealousy, his suspicion that maybe, just maybe, Daniel was the one I trusted more. And the truth was, I didn't know anymore. The next morning, I found Daniel waiting outside my office. His eyes were bloodshot, his expression carved from stone. "Don't go in," he said. My heart skipped. "Why?" He handed me a folded piece of paper. I opened it and my blood ran cold. Inside was a photograph taken from outside my home, the window of our bedroom. Ethan and I asleep, unaware. On the back, scrawled in sharp black ink, "Choose or I'll choose for you." My stomach lurched. My hands shook so badly I nearly dropped the photo. "He's watching us," Daniel said softly. "Every move, every word. He's waiting for you to slip." I pressed the photo to my chest, fighting the wave of nausea. How do we fight someone who's everywhere? Daniel's jaw tightened. We stop reacting to him. We take control. But Ethan wasn't on board. When I showed him the photo, his face went red with rage. "That's it. I'm done playing his games. We go to the police. Now." "You know what Steele does to anyone who tries to expose him," I argued. "He'll bury us before we get a word out." Ethan slammed his fist against the wall. "So what? We just let him terrorize us. Let him pit us against each other until we're broken." Daniel stepped forward. "We need strategy, not panic. Steele wants chaos. If we stay calm, we can outmaneuver him." Ethan rounded on him. "Oh, of course. And you're the genius who'll save her, right? Always swooping in, always the hero." Daniel's expression didn't change, but his silence was answer enough. And for the first time, I realized Steele didn't even need to be in the room anymore. His poison had already seeped into us, splitting us apart. That night, I sat alone on the porch, staring into the darkness. The air was heavy, thick with the scent of rain. I thought of Steele's wife, the one he claimed betrayed him. Was she real, alive? Or just another ghost he used to haunt me? And I wondered, was I already becoming her? Another woman swallowed whole by his obsession. The creak of the porch swing beside me made me jump. Daniel sat down close enough that I felt the heat radiating from his body. "You can't let him get inside your head," he murmured. "He already has," I whispered. Daniel's hand brushed mine, tentative, lingering. "Then let me pull you out." I should have pulled away. I should have thought of Ethan sleeping inside. But in that moment, I was too tired, too scared, too desperate for comfort. So I didn't move. And that was the moment everything truly began to unravel. Later, when I finally slipped back into bed, Ethan stirred. His eyes opened, catching the faint glow of the streetlight. "Where were you?" he asked, his voice low, dangerous. My heart thudded in my chest. "Just outside. Needed air." His gaze searched mine, suspicion flickering like lightning. With him, I couldn't answer. My silence was enough. Ethan turned onto his back, staring at the ceiling. "If you choose him," he said coldly, "then you've already chosen against me." I lay awake until dawn, tears burning my eyes, knowing that no matter what I did next, Steele had already won something priceless, the fracture of my marriage. And yet, deep inside, I also knew something else. The endgame was coming. And when it did, blood would be the price, whether mine, Ethan's, Daniel's, or Steele's. The storm broke the next day. Not in the sky, though dark clouds had gathered thick and low, but in my life. It started with a call. A number I didn't recognize, but when I answered, the voice was unmistakable. Claire Steele purred, calm, almost affectionate. "You've been making this so much fun, but the time for games is over. Tonight you'll come to me. Alone. Or Ethan dies." My blood turned to ice. You touch him, and I swear you'll what he cut in smoothly. Run to your cop boyfriend, cry to your jealous husband, no sweetheart. You'll come because you love him, and because you know me well enough to understand I don't make empty threats. The line went dead. I dropped the phone, my hands trembling so violently I had to grip the edge of the counter to stay upright. Ethan was in the living room leafing through paperwork, oblivious. How was I supposed to tell him that every choice I made seemed to place him in more danger? Daniel arrived not long after. I must have looked pale because his expression hardened the second he saw me. What happened? I handed him the phone. He read the message silently, jaw tightening. We're not letting you go alone, Daniel said immediately. Ethan overheard and slammed the papers onto the coffee table. He's right. We'll both go. I shook my head. No. That's what he wants. He wants us divided, reactive. If you follow me, he'll know. And he'll kill Ethan without hesitation. Then what's your plan? Ethan demanded. His eyes burned with frustration, fear, love twisted into something desperate. Walk into his trap and hope he spares you. Maybe, I whispered. Daniel slammed his fist against the wall. Absolutely not. You won't be his sacrificial lamb. But deep down, I knew I had to go. That evening, I drove alone. The rain came down in sheets, the wipers barely keeping up. My knuckles were white on the steering wheel, every mile carrying me closer to whatever Steele had prepared. He'd sent coordinates, a warehouse on the edge of town. Abandoned, forgotten. The kind of place where screams would echo and die unheard. When I arrived, the parking lot was empty except for a single black SUV. The sight made my stomach twist. I stepped inside. The air was damp, smelling of oil and rust. Shadows pooled in corners, broken windows rattling with the storm. And then I saw him. Steele standing beneath a single dangling bulb, his suit immaculate despite the dripping ceiling, his smile razor sharp. Claire, he said warmly as if greeting an old friend. You came. Where's Ethan? My voice was steady though, inside my chest thundered like the storm outside. In good hands. For now. Steele tilted his head. You've been quite the puzzle, you know. Loyal wife, loyal agent torn between two men. It's beautiful, messy, human. But every story needs an ending. My throat tightened. And what's mine? He stepped closer, his eyes glittering. That depends. Choose me and your husband lives. Walk away and I'll make sure you hear his last scream. I flinched, bile rising. You're insane. Maybe. But I'm also the one holding the pieces. And you. He reached out, brushing a strand of wet hair from my cheek. You're the queen. Every war ends with her capture. I jerked away. I'll never be yours. He chuckled softly. We'll see. Suddenly the back door burst open. Daniel stormed in, gun-raised fury etched into every line of his face. Step away from her. Behind him, Ethan staggered in, too, drenched, his eyes wild. My heart stopped. No. What are you doing here? Ethan's voice cracked. You think I'd let you face him alone? Steele's grin widened. Perfect. The husband and the lover. My masterpiece is complete. Daniel ignored him, eyes locked on me. Claire, get behind me. But Ethan shoved forward, standing in front of me himself. No. I'm her husband. I protect her. And just like that, Steele got exactly what he wanted, the two of them circling each other instead of him. Look at you, Steele mocked. Two men, one woman, and neither realizing she's already mine. Rage snapped through me. I'm not yours. In that instant, the world slowed. Steele reached into his jacket, pulling out a small device, its red light blinking like a heartbeat. Daniel's finger tightened on the trigger. Ethan lunged. And I moved without thinking. I grabbed Steele's wrist, shoving the device upward just as his thumb pressed down. A deafening click echoed, but nothing happened. My ears rang, my heart hammering. Daniel fired. The bullet tore through Steele's shoulder, spinning him sideways. The device flew from his hand, clattering across the floor. Ethan dove for it, sliding on his knees, catching it just before it skidded into the shadows. Steele staggered, clutching his wound but still grinning. Blood seeped between his fingers, dark and thick. "You think this ends me?" he rasped. "I built an empire out of shadows. Kill me and another will rise. But her," his gaze locked on me, wild and burning, "she'll always carry me inside her." Daniel's gun wavered. Ethan held the device like it was poison. And I stood frozen, my breath shallow, knowing this was the final choice. Do I let Daniel pull the trigger? Do I stop Ethan from destroying the device? Do I step forward and end this myself? The storm outside roared louder, rattling the warehouse walls as if the sky itself demanded an answer. And deep inside, I knew whichever path I chose, none of us would leave unscarred. The moment stretched, suspended in lightning. I could hear my pulse hammering in my ears, louder than the storm, louder than Steele's ragged breathing. Daniel's gun was steady again, his knuckles white. Ethan still clutched the device, sweat dripping down his temple. And me, I felt like I stood on the edge of two cliffs, both promising ruin. "No one else decides this, but me," I whispered. I stepped forward, past Ethan, past Daniel, until I stood directly in front of Steele. His grin faltered, confusion flickering in his eyes. "You don't own me," I said, my voice clear, sharp, final. "You never did. And tonight, you lose everything." With a sudden kick, I sent him sprawling back against a rusted pillar. Daniel fired again, the bullet slamming into his chest this time. Steele gasped, blood bubbling at his lips, the light in his eyes dimming even as that twisted smile lingered. "You'll remember me," he croaked. "Always." Then silence. The storm outside began to ease, the thunder rolling farther away. Daniel lowered his gun, chest heaving. Ethan finally dropped the device and it clattered harmlessly across the floor. I stood trembling, staring down at Steele's lifeless body. Relief should have flooded me. Instead, all I felt was hollow. Ethan reached for me, his hands gripping my shoulders. "It's over. Claire, it's over." Daniel's eyes, though, were fixed on me, unreadable shadows flickering behind his steady gaze. And in that moment, I realized the war wasn't just with Steele. It was inside us, between trust and betrayal, love and jealousy, fear and forgiveness. The weeks after blurred. Steele's empire crumbled, his network dismantled by raids and confessions from men who once swore loyalty to him. The agency hailed it as a victory, a headline, a story to put on record. But in private, the scars lingered. Ethan struggled to look at me without flinching. Sometimes I caught him staring, his jaw clenched, as though replaying every time I'd called Daniel partner. Daniel kept his distance. We rarely spoke, unless it was professional. But when our eyes met, there was always that unspoken memory of the warehouse, of the choices I'd made. And me, I lived in between. In the silence of long nights, I wondered if catching Steele had cost me something bigger, the marriage I once thought unshakable, the partnership I thought unbreakable, the trust that made me who I was. One evening, I sat alone on the porch, the sunset bleeding across the sky. Ethan came out quietly, sitting beside me. For a long time, we didn't speak. Then he said, "I hated him. But I hated you more for making me feel like I wasn't enough." The words cut, but they were honest. I swallowed hard. "And I hated you for not trusting me, for letting jealousy cloud everything we'd built." He looked at me, then really looked, and for the first time since it ended, I saw something in his eyes besides anger, exhaustion, vulnerability, maybe even hope. "Can we fix it?" he asked softly. I didn't answer right away, because I didn't know. But I reached for his hand. He let me. And maybe that was a start. Now, telling you this story, I realize revenge doesn't always come with fireworks. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it's just surviving. I pretended to be married to a colleague to catch a criminal. My jealous husband nearly destroyed it all. And in the end, it wasn't about Steele, or the lies, or even the danger. It was about love, and what happens when trust is fractured. Maybe we'll heal. Maybe we won't. But I'll never forget the night I stood between two men I loved, and the devil who thought he owned me. And neither should you. Trust me, you'll regret skipping stories like this. So if you've listened this far, take a second to like the video and subscribe to Grace's Truth. And now I want to hear from you. Have you ever been caught between loyalty and love, between trust and betrayal? Share your story in the comments, because sometimes the truth is stranger and sharper than any fiction.